Have you ever seen a child's eyes hold wonder like a cup? They widen till they're twice their size to drink new knowledge up. And when their flame of hope ignites, it lights up 20,000 nights. That hope is always there, awaiting just one teacher to care. That's why I teach, why I preach, why I stretch my soul and reach, why I treasure each young future as my own. Why I try, why I cry, why I'll fight until I die, even if I have to do it all alone. Have you known a happy family with many hundred kids, with countless miracles to see? Their eyes won't close their lids. There's so much love to get and give. You long for 10 more lives to live. But even when we're gone, the hearts we touch still carry us on. That's why I teach, why I preach, why I stretch my soul and reach, why I treasure each young future as my own. Why I try, why I cry, why I'll fight until I die, even if I have to do it all alone. These little pieces up forever all trust me with their dreams. We become together the team of teams. If I just walked away, abandon this old place, no glitter and fortune that fate threw my way could ever replace the look on the face of one of my children when fear is erased by what I say and what I teach. That's why I teach, why I preach, why I stretch my soul and reach, why I treasure each young future as my own. Why I try, why I cry, why I'll fight until I die, even if I have to do it all alone. Why I teach, why I preach, why I stretch my soul and reach, why I treasure each young future as my own. Why I try, why I cry, why I'll fight until I die, even if I have to do it all alone. Even if I have to do it all
Welcome back to New American Youth Ballet Presents. I'm your host, Elizabeth Flores, and I am so honored to have John Kunich with us today. I came to know John through Tim Simonak, who is a brilliant Hollywood arranger, and he was just raving about this new musical called Marva, based on the life of Marva Collins, that John has been working on, and the music I've heard is just fantastic. So thank you so much for doing this program and taking the time to share about this wonderful project you're doing.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
How did this come about? What was your inspiration for this?
Well, I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, which is where Marva Collins really made her reputation. She was originally from a little town called Atmore, Alabama, and she grew up in like the Jim Crow era South, where racial discrimination was just rampant and very intense. But she went to, I think, secretarial school in Atmore, and she taught typing for a while. And then she decided she was going to move up to Chicago and become a school teacher. And I didn't know any of this. I was sort of a nerd, and still am, I guess. I've got a lifetime membership in the Nerd Society. And I went to college at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and I studied entomology, the study of bugs. And I got a Bachelor of Science degree in that, and I stayed for a second helping. I got a Master of Science in entomology as well, still from the same university. And I was just minding my own business, studying things that could never help me to earn a living. And I then saw on 60 Minutes in 1980, and 60 Minutes, for the people younger than about 100, that's a TV show that appeals to folks my age. And it was really a big thing back in the day, and I guess it still is. Morley Safer did a segment in 1980 on Too Good to Be True, and he went to Mrs. Collins' school. Yeah.
You have it all here on West Adams Street, all the familiar big city blight. The forever broken windows, the burnt out flats, the disemboweled abandoned cars. And then you have 3819 West Adams.
The Canterbury Tales are about whom?
Jeffrey Charles.
They're about whom? How many were there?
29.
There are no frills at West Side. The emphasis is on basic education, with an even stronger emphasis on literature and composition. There are no teacher breaks, no teacher desks. She is on her feet and over their shoulders all day, pushing them, cajoling them, and praising them.
Very, very good, Lisa. Very, very good. Cum laude.
And the results are apparent even to a casual bystander. Alert and challenged children being pushed way beyond the boundaries most school systems set. Who's your favorite author?
Jeffrey Chaucer and Shakespeare. Booker T. Washington and Hans Christian Andersen. My favorite book is The Greek Myth.
Greek myths.
I like Fyodor Dostoevsky and Dante Alighieri and Shakespeare.
And your favorite book?
Divine Comedy.
I like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, and I like Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre.
So what happened to those 34 students we met at Westside Prep? Charles Murray says by implication that their apparent intelligence and promise was a fraud, that what we saw was just too good to be true. What was it? We traced 33 of the 34 and flew a group of them back to Chicago, back to Westside Prep's new location for a reunion of sorts.
Aren't you pretty?
To see if Charles Murray's allegations in the bell curve are true, to see whether or not these young men and women lived up to Marva's claims. Christopher Stubblefield,
We learn to read hard words.
the 8-year-old with the big voice, is now at university in Texas, and Erica McCoy Pace graduated last spring from Norfolk State University. When you saw her last, she was listing her favorite authors.
Emerson, Henry David Thoreau.
And what about the rest of our class of 79?
Michael Anderson, Taylor. Terry Holmes, owner-operator of transportation company.
LaTanya Singleton, preschool teacher.
James Lowe, Staff Sergeant, United States Air Force.
Sabrina Yates, 6th grade teacher.
Rysel Winters, law student.
Louis Johnson, operations manager.
Xavier Jones, teacher, criminal justice major.
Craig Brunner, clerk for the state's attorney's office.
I remember I had said in front of all my classmates here that I want to become an attorney. And it's funny, I'm actually in law school and I graduate next year. And Ms. Collins told me, oh yes, you can do it. You can do whatever you want to do. It's possible. And I'm living proof it is possible.
A number of you are teachers. Were you inspired by her to become teachers?
Definitely. She just gave so much to me personally in terms of always being reassuring. I mean, just the small things, like she would grab my face and say, Pretty girl.
You're brilliant. Speak
Yeah.
up, honey, you're brilliant.
That's right.
Especially Craig. She would take his head and raise it up. Speak up, honey, you're brilliant.
That's right.
And, you know, after someone telling you that
Every day.
every day,
Day
5 days a week, for
Confidence.
3 or 4 years, you know, that's in you. That becomes a part of you. You are brilliant, honey.
I was astounded that in my hometown, something like this was happening. In the Garfield Park neighborhood, there were people, little children, most of whom had been cast off by the public school system as unteachable. And there was Marva Collins, this African-American lady, teaching them, you know, Shakespeare and Plato and Socrates in her little homemade school. And they know more than I do. And I was supposedly educated. I had a master's degree and all that, but these kids were amazing. I said, this is fantastic. And so I just sort of put that in the back of my mind while I went into the Air Force, and I spent 20 years in the Air Force. And meanwhile, sooner or later, 60 Minutes did another segment on Mrs. Collins in 1995. Morley Safer went back to them. This was during the era when the bell curve was making all sorts of controversial headlines. Charles Murray had written this book claiming that certain racial groups are just inherently not capable of doing very good academic work, and there's nothing you can do about it. And he actually mentioned Marva Collins School by name. So Morley went back to interview the students that he had interviewed in her school back in 1980. It's now 15 years later, and all of them were doing wonderfully. One student in particular had been cast off as learning disabled by the public school system, but Mrs. Collins taught her. And the week before the program entered, she had graduated summa cum laude from the University of Virginia. And so I said, I got to reach out to her, you know. I contacted her, and she invited me to come to her school. And at that point, I would like to say the rest is history, but it isn't really history yet. I'm still working on that part of it. But I went to her school, and she just knew me as an Air Force guy with a couple of degrees in biology, and I wanted to see what she was doing. And she brought me in. I brought my mom with me. And one thing that impressed me immediately was, while I was talking with Mrs. Collins, this little child, one of her students, was crying in the hallway. He wanted to see her, and so she politely, excused herself and went to talk to this little child for a little while. And then she came back to my mom and me, and she said he was crying because he had been told that his teacher was out sick that day and wouldn't be in. I said, really? I don't think there's ever been a time in my life when I'd be crying because my teachers couldn't be there that day. And here he was. And she had a little pity party with him and comforted him. She'll be back soon. This is something. This is really fantastic. I have to do something about this. And what could I do? There had already been a made-for-TV movie, the Marva Collins story, starring Cicely Tyson and Morgan Freeman. And I had watched that when it came out in 1981, and I was crying like a baby when the show was on. This is too good to be true, but it is true. And so what I decided to do was, well, that's the weird part, because I was an Air Force officer, I was an egghead. By that point, I'd actually gone to law school, and I'd gone on to get a Master of Laws in Environmental Law. And I was working away on writing books like Betting the Earth, How We Can Still Win the Biggest Gamble of All Time, or Ark of the Broken Covenant, Protecting the World's Biodiversity Hotspots, or Yes, You're a Leader, How Anyone Can Be a Leader. And I said, how is this going to help her? I mean, yeah, we might do something about climate change or endangered species going extinct, but that really doesn't solve the problem Mrs. Collins is devoting her life to, teaching these inner city children, all of whom were African American, and she's making them into superstars that go on to do all sorts of phenomenal things. And then I said, this is like a fish out of water story. In my spare time, I had taken up songwriting. And you might say, oh, you must play some musical instruments, right? You have some training. Nope. I don't play any musical instruments, even badly. You could put me in front of one and my cat would probably do a better dong, 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 dong. I can't play any instruments, cannot read music, but somehow I'm able to come up with the music in my head and I'm able to write the lyrics. And some of my friends said, this stuff that we're seeing, like these Disney movies and stuff, like The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast, you can do that. Yeah, but what would I write about? They're already doing all these great famous stories. And so you keep talking about this teacher in Chicago and how you admire her. Why don't I write a musical about how she started her school? Well, that's stupid. How could there be a musical about that? There wouldn't be any falling chandeliers or, the Wizard of Oz comes to life and there's Elphaba.
Right? It's break the windows.
Yeah. So that's crazy. You must be out of your mind. And then I started thinking about it. Actually, why not? I mean, all they can do is say no. And so I started working on the musical back in the mid 1990s. And well, that sort of brings us up to today.
Wow. The music. And when I edit this, I'm going to share some samples of the pieces that you have had recorded with beautiful singers. Mm-hmm. The One Thing You Can Never Do. Fool Mrs. Collins, right, is the one. Yes. So Many Children. The Only Handout. It's Not White to Be Bright. Most Important Person. And Why I Teach, which is the first one I listened to, and Tim was saying, play that one first. With the phenomenal music and the lyrics are just really tell such a story.
Well, thank you. What made it for me was a bunch of years ago, I was in touch with Marva. We'd moved into different areas. I was living now, I guess, in Rhode Island teaching law, and she said when she heard Why I Teach, she told her husband, when I shuffle off this mortal coil, as Shakespeare put it, when I pass away, in other words, I've told my husband, I want that song Why I Teach played at my memorial service, because it summarizes what my whole life's been all about. And when she told me that, if nothing else ever comes of this, that is enough. If she thinks that I captured her life's mission with one of my songs, I've done what I set out to do. But I'm hoping to do a lot more than that. And what I told her during our conversations is, if I ever get this show actually on a stage somewhere and it actually generates money, which I hear that some people actually make money by doing music and plays. I certainly never have, but I don't think it's a myth. If I ever do that, I'm going to donate half of all my royalties as the composer, as the lyricist, and as the script writer to your schools to keep them going. They were always short of money. She never charged much tuition, and if people couldn't pay, she just let them come anyhow. I'm going to donate half of my royalties as scriptwriter, lyricist, and composer to your schools to keep them going, and hopefully to start new schools in other cities so that children all over the country, whether they're living in the inner city or not, have a chance at the kind of quality education that changes their lives and the lives of everyone they'll ever know, for the better and for good. And she said, you don't have to do that. I said, well, what else am I going to do if I become Scrooge McDuck, and I have a money bin full of money, which I certainly still don't. But if that ever happens, I'm going to donate half of it to your schools. What better use could I put it to? And so that's been the situation. And then thus far, now it's I think it's 2023. Half of zero is still, unfortunately, nothing, but I keep working on it. And by working on it over all these years, I've continued to tinker with the music, the lyrics, and the script, working on them. And I think, some good has come over this 25 years of frustration and beating my head against the wall. The stuff is a lot better than it was even a couple of years ago. And Quincy Jones, the iconic
Oh, yeah.
producer, and he actually produced Michael Jackson's
Yep.
Thriller and Bad albums, which right away, this guy, he knows what he's doing. Marva was friends with Quincy. She had a lot of celebrity friends because of her 60 Minutes segments and the Marva Collins story. She actually gave some of my stuff to Quincy Jones, and he calls me on the phone in my law school professor office. I'm so glad I didn't hang up on him, because if somebody identifies as Quincy Jones calling me at Roger Williams Law School, click, come on, who do you think I am? I'm not that stupid. But no, it really is Quincy Jones. And he said, I've listened to your songs and it's all great, man. It's been a long time since I've been this excited about anything. Wow, Quincy Jones loves my stuff. But even then, he was getting on in years. And but I thought, if he likes my songs, that has to mean something. He wouldn't say that if he didn't think that. And so I've always thought, if I can manage to get this to the right people, if people hear about it, it's not going to have incredible, flashy special effects. It's just going to be miracles on a student and teacher and family level, the kinds of miracles that really happen and that change the world. If that can happen, this and the royalties it would generate and the people who it might inspire can affect so many lives that the good would be unimaginable. You couldn't really estimate what could come of that. And that's what's kept me going over all these years. Well, I approach, God willing, I'll be 70 years old later this month, but I keep exercising. I stayed alive long enough to watch the Cubs finally win a world championship after a mere 108-year drought. And so I said, if I can keep alive and keep working on this, it might actually happen.
Oh, for sure. I had the privilege of meeting Marva Collins a few years back. I was at it was called Eckerd Salute to Women, and I believe she was the keynote speaker. And I couldn't believe I met her, because I had watched the story, I had read about her, and just as a ballet teacher, it's not the same, but it's really special when you look at a student as a person and not labeled. I remember I had a teacher who labeled me that I couldn't remember anything. And I remember she said that to me. And I remember, the damage that it can do when, and I've gone through different things with my own kids where people want to say, oh, they took this test, and they don't show that they're talented for anything. And I said, how can you say that to a person? How can you view an individual that God created with all the different facets to their personality? Maybe you don't know how to teach them, and that's why you're saying that, because it's easier for you to give up and put a black mark on their potential.
She held her students to the same high standard she expected of herself. She would work tirelessly, in fact, beyond the point of exhaustion, to help every child she ever had. And one of her sayings was, every child can be a real achiever. And she firmly believed that, and she devoted her life to that, and she proved it true again and again. And there they were in Garfield Park's age 7 with Mrs. Collins working with them, and they were excited about Plato and Dante and Socrates. And this is a miracle, and it's happening under the radar. So few people actually know about this, and they're always strapped for cash. They're always facing crises and tuition and how they're going to pay the bills 1 month from now. It's going to all close, and that's been enough for me to say, I'm not rich, but I can devote my time and whatever talents I have to this. And I'm so glad that I've met you, and I've met other people like Tim Simonek who are willing to listen to this nerd who has absolutely no street cred when it comes to musical theater, can't even read music, can't play a note on any instrument. And this guy wrote a musical with music and lyrics and a script. I'm going to listen to him. Thank God some people are willing to take a chance. And this is a real fish out of water story. In fact, I say I'm not really a fish out of water. I'm a fish in outer space. I'm somewhere beyond what used to be known as the planet.
So is the story, isn't it? The story is that way, and the fact that it drove you to do this. I mean, the music is wonderful. I've been to countless shows where I go out and I say to my family, I can't remember one song I heard, or the lyrics are meaningless. But what's exciting about this is the message and the fact she instills confidence in her students, but with that comes a high standard.
All it takes is one person to believe in it, somebody who has some resources, who has money, who knows people who are similarly situated, they've been blessed. If you need something to live for, if you need something to justify your incredible wealth and fame, other than more wealth and more fame, why don't we help some children who otherwise are going to be in the same boat as so many of those kids were in Chicago before Mrs. Collins started her school? A lot of administrators, and they have very dedicated public school teachers. They do what they can within the resources they're given, but a lot of times the system is structured against them. Oh, don't worry. I mean, they can't learn. Just try to keep the classroom orderly for a few hours every day. That's all we're asking. Then they can go out on the street. Whatever happens once they're out of school, that's not our worry. What a defeatist attitude that is. And so many children all over the country, in fact, all over the world, are in that boat. And it's built for failure. They have no path for progression. They're just, all these children are assumed to have such low limits. And when people believe that about you, it makes a difference. When people believe the opposite, every child can be a real achiever. Mrs. Collins proved that.
Thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to seeing this show on Broadway.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor for me to be here.
Same here. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So many children are in need. So many mouths and minds to feed. Hundreds go hungry for each one we save, doomed to an early grave. So many children wait outside, sentenced to fail, then cast aside. We've got our own kids to free from this hell. Now we have these as well. 7 days a week, burn out. Each day 2 dozen hours.